Okay, so one of the roles of the thalamus, because it receives all the sensory information, is it makes decisions, if you will, about what information should be passed on to higher parts of the nervous system and what should be kind of stopped right there or die in the vine. You know, for instance, if the sensory information is not particularly relevant at that moment, those action potentials related to that sensory input will just, in a sense, stop. The information won't be transmitted on to higher parts of the brain. If that information is relevant, such as I'm in extreme pain, that information is going to get through the thalamus. Okay, so you can think of the thalamus as kind of a gateway. Okay, either stuff is knocked out at that point, or it travels on up into the higher parts of the brain. So where do you think the thalamus is located? Maybe I should back up. I mean, even from the little bit we've talked about, it should be clear that the thalamus, because it receives all these sensory inputs, is a really critical part of your brain. Okay, and we talked about the other day, if you lose sensory information from your body and obviously your sight or whatever, you're going to have difficulty functioning. Okay, so we've got this very critical part of our brain called the thalamus. Now, where do you think you'd want to locate that? Okay, so you'd want to be in the spinal cord, or I mean near the spinal cord, because it's going to, by definition it will, because it's a central nervous system tissue, and it's in a place where it can receive all these inputs from the spinal cord that are traveling, you know, from our skin and our muscles up the spinal cord. Yes?
A central part of the brain.
Right, so you'd want to put something that critical to the survival of the species at kind of in a central part of the brain. You want it to be as well protected as possible. Okay, because, I mean, it's a relay station for all your sensory information. And where do you think it's located? I thought you were going to answer. Okay, well, we can wait. No, I don't want to put her on the spot. Okay, so we've got a suggestion that if you were designing a system to protect something as critical as the kind of gateway for all sensory information, you'd put it in the central part of the brain. Okay, so where do you think it's located?
Center part of the brain.
Thank you. So he said center part of the brain. Okay, and that's where it's down by the ventricles. It's kind of right in the middle of your brain. It's as well protected as we can get. Okay, I mean, it's surrounded by obviously your skull and then all this other neural tissue that's called your brain. Okay, so it's in a pretty safe place, so you tend not to have damage to the thalamus itself unless you have just massive damage to your brain. Where let's say you have, I mean, a lot of strokes will occur, you know, more on, let's say, on the periphery of the brain, and so you'll have parts of the brain of your cortex will be injured. But it's fairly rare to have just, you know, parts or elements or some nuclei within your thalamus injured. I mean, normally if you're having your thalamus injured, you're going to have a whole lot of your brain injured. So that will just be another one feature, so, which is a good thing.